might we do when we feel that God has abandoned us? Perhaps we feel that He has given us false hope. Perhaps we feel that He has lied to us, that He has forgotten about us. But we have to remember that even Christ, while He was on the cross, said, "O God, why have you forsaken me?" So if, even for a moment, Christ felt that God had abandoned Him, then is it not likely that we might also feel the same at one point or another? When we find ourselves in that throne room, in the devil's throne room, that moment where we feel furthest from God, it's very easy to feel like there's no hope, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, that there's no possible way we could ever get out of the situation that we find ourselves in. But just as Christ, we must take this opportunity, this point of maximum suffering that we experience, to rise again, to be born again. Because the suffering that we are experiencing, the pain that we feel, is all of the parts that we are not dying off. It's the burning of the dead wood, all the parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. Like the phoenix from the ashes, we are able to rise again. This is our opportunity to let go of our lesser and former selves, to let go of our identity and our attachment to this false self that we've come to believe. Because sometimes we are so stubborn in our ways that the only way to rise above our false self is through immense amount of suffering. And every successful person you will ever meet will likely tell you the same thing, and that is, I would have never chosen to go through those dark times, through those difficult experiences, but I wouldn't change it for the world because it made me who I am today. Carl Jung said, "A tree cannot grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell," which means the more darkness you go through, the more suffering that you experience, the greater potential you have to rise up to higher and higher states of being. I believe Christ said in Revelations that those who are lukewarm, He will spit from His mouth. Those who knew neither hot nor cold. Because lukewarm is plain, it's boring, it's uninteresting. But those who experience the greatest darkness will also have the greatest appreciation for the light. Because this reality was meant to be experienced through contrast, through the dynamic play of opposites. And so you will have a choice. You will come to a crossroads when you find yourself in that moment of maximum suffering where you are the furthest away from God. You will either choose the path of Satan or you will follow Christ. Because Christ and Satan are often seen as brothers, but in reality, they are polar opposites. Their stories are very similar. but their attitude is what differentiates them. So for instance, Christ, when he was being crucified, in the process where he was most in his body, most in the earth and furthest away from God, he chose compassion. He told God to forgive the people who were crucifying him. The crucifixion itself was an act of love, because it was through his sacrifice because it was in the sacrifice itself that he proved that we are all capable of having compassion and love, even for those who might not deserve it. And Satan, on the other hand, when he was cast down from heaven, when he was separated from God, he chose to remain in his hatred for mankind, in his hatred for himself, because of his pride. And that is the contrast between Satan and Christ, is pride versus humility. So will you allow these difficult experiences, the terrible experiences that we can go through in this life, will they make us humble, or will they make us resentful and hateful? I understand very clearly what it's like to hate the world and hate God for the things that God put me through. I was able to empathize with the devil because I could understand where he was coming from in that moment of maximum separation from God. But you see, you cannot sustain a life full of hatred, full of resentment, because where that eventually leads is the death and destruction of not only oneself, but everyone around you. And so there's a choice to let go of the pride and allow oneself to be humbled, to let go of their heavy attachments and their heavy identity, to stop relying on ourselves so much to figure things out, to make life the way we want it to be. Because we are so limited and frail in our nature, even though humans are magnificent beings, we are still weighted heavily by our lower nature. So we often want things that aren't in our best interest. Sometimes we want things that hurt other people because we lack the wisdom and understanding of what is right. And that is one of the most difficult things to face when we are so deeply entrenched in depression and negative emotions and suffering and even hell, is that we have to face that it was our desires, it was our actions that led us to this place. And most of us will put that blame onto somebody else, so we never have to face our actions. Because show me a single human being on this earth that is not a victim. Show me someone who life hasn't been unfair to. It's easy to blame others. It's easy to blame our environment. It's easy to blame the devil or evil. And even if we are right, it does nothing to change or help the situation whatsoever. And so the only option is self-reflection. The only option is to change ourselves and our own ways. Because that is what the fire and flames of hell was designed to do. It was designed to kill and destroy the parts of ourselves that got us in that situation in the first place. And if we can let those old parts die off, then we can rise again. We can be born again. Because when you let go of all that you are not, what remains is of the highest good, the highest truth. It is love, it is peace and joy. This is our natural state. But through life, we lose our way. We get lost because of the bad things that happen to us. And because bad things happen to us, we get caught in doing bad things. Sometimes because we're hurt, we hurt other people. That is why it is of the utmost importance to heal oneself. And if you are able to rise up from these dark places, then you can guide others who might be going down the wrong path, who might be headed toward where you've already been. And you may be able to keep them from experiencing the suffering as you did. Sometimes God will lead us down these dark paths because we have a higher calling. Because through suffering, this shapes our character. It makes us humble. And it is so difficult to understand and see any kind of higher purpose, to see God's plan when we are so deep into suffering. Sometimes we are so consumed by hate that hate is all we can see. And because we feel pain, we often feel that others should feel our pain as well. And so it's easy to get lost. It's easy to be consumed by the hate. But so long as you do not lose hope, so long as you have a deep yearning to make life better or to find freedom from suffering, then God and life in the universe, it will help guide you. If you have a good heart, and no matter what happens to you, you will be guided. There will be a helping hand in times of trouble, and you will never be forgotten. But so long as you hold on to your pride, to the ego, then we block and prevent the blessings and the help and the guidance from coming into our lives. Because it is very difficult, if not impossible, to serve two masters. And this has been a difficult thing for me to come to grips with. Is that who are you going to serve? Are you going to serve the mind? Or are you going to serve God? Are you going to serve yourself? Or are you going to let yourself go? That is why humility is one of the highest virtues. Because when we can let ourselves go, when we can stop relying on ourselves so heavily, we can begin building the foundation of our life on solid ground. Because I like to say, why would you build the foundation of your life on something that is unstable, that is changing, that is temporary? And yet 99% of all human beings do this. We rely on our mind that is always changing to direct our lives. We trust it and believe everything it says, the voice inside of our head. But if you really pay attention, you see how neurotic this voice often is, how wrong it is all the time. We rely on this person to figure things out, to make life the way we want it, But our personality, this person who we believe ourselves to be, changes every day. This body is temporary and it dies. And yet we expect our lives to be good and right when we have built it on a foundation that is temporary and changing and unstable. And that is why when the storms of life come, when the winter comes and the difficult times arrive, many of us do not survive because everything that we are is just washed away. We had no solid foundation. But that is why when we trust and put our faith and attention on the eternal, on God, that which is true and never changes, then the foundation of our life is so strong that there is absolutely nothing, no problem that we cannot face. Faith is important because when you're in the dark times, when you're in the suffering, you need to have something to get you through that. But I find that understanding is better than faith. Because when you understand the nature of reality, when you understand that the power of God is within you, that it's never separated from you, that it's always here with you now, and you find that you can create and have any life that you desire, that you can overcome any problem and any difficulty. You can have any life you desire so long as it's good for you and good for the world and good for the people around you. You can have a life better than anything you could ever have dreamed of. But oftentimes we are so attached to wanting the things that we want and the way that we want them that we sabotage ourselves in our life. We make it hard for ourselves. When we understand what you might call the game of life, then you can see that these difficult situations, these dark times, are simply planting the seeds for our highest growth, our highest development. They are shaping a much more powerful character. Because think about it, if you've never gone through anything, if you've never been through anything difficult, your character might not be that strong because you've never had the pressure. You've never had the forces of evil to overcome. So don't lose hope in these dark times. Realize that our reality is created first in our mind. Our thoughts then produce our emotional states. Our emotions, our feelings then influence the way we act. Then our actions produce consequences in our life. And this all is rooted in identity. Because our identity is what causes our mind to focus on certain things. It produces certain thoughts that reflect our identity. And that is why sometimes we could be led to these hellish places. It is because our identity led us there. And so that identity must be destroyed. It must be let go of. Because it no longer serves us. And you don't have to wait for these terrible times to change. You just have to pay attention to the thoughts that you think, to the words that you speak. Listen to yourself, and you will understand why your life is the way it is. Because through our words, we create reality. Through our thoughts, we create reality. And especially our actions. So if you're not living the life that you desire, then change your actions. If you're not feeling the way you want to, then change your thoughts. If you're not taking the right actions, if you're not thinking the right thoughts, if you're not feeling the emotions you want to feel, then change your identity. One thing is for certain, is that suffering creates change. It motivates us to avoid business as usual. And because we are often so stubborn, sometimes we need a bit of fire to get us to really pay attention and work things out. This is the way it was designed to be. What this really comes down to is changing our perspective, changing the paradigm of reality in which we are living in. Because the moment you realize that every single thing that happens to us in this life is precisely the exact thing that we need at the precise moment for our highest character development. And you see, the universe is in no rush. Whether you figure it out in a year, or 10 years, or 1 lifetime, or 100 lifetimes, doesn't matter. Because we will continue to experience the same lessons over and over again until we learn. You don't just get to graduate unless you pass the tests. When you focus your attention on improving yourself, growing your character, to view yourself on a spiritual journey, then you can understand that maybe I don't see the big picture yet of why I'm going through all this suffering, but you know deep down that there is a higher purpose. That these are the times that will give rise to the greatest experiences, to the greatest adventures. You will be able to do the greatest service to humanity because you will have been strong enough to survive, to make it through, to overcome evil and the darkness. Because the point was never to get rid of evil or to get rid of the bad things. The point was to rise up in spite of them. We think that we can create this kind of utopia in the world, free from suffering, free from evil. But again, that was never the point. This universe, this world, was not meant for that. That is why this life can be so difficult for us. Because we don't understand. We don't realize that all the evil in the world was put there specifically for a reason. And that our job is to stand for what we believe in, for what we believe is right, in the face of that evil. Because without that evil, you would have no opportunity to present your strength, your power, your courage. If everything was so nice and dandy at all the time, then why even go through the trouble of being born and living a life in the first place? We could just float around in bliss all the time, not have to worry about anything. But even if things were happy and joyful all the time, eventually it would just be more of just the same. You would find yourself wanting a bit of the sadness, maybe some anger, these different emotions that are the colors of life. Life was meant to experience the array of different flavors. These different flavors of experience are what make life beautiful. So continue fighting and making your way through the darkness, because no matter how hopeless it seems, so long as you believe, then you can achieve anything. But the moment you give up, the moment you lose hope, is the moment you forgo your destiny. I like to say the overwhelming majority of the battle in this life is simply surviving the days that we want to give it all up. Is to not kill ourselves when we want nothing more than freedom from suffering. The world needs your light, your uniqueness, and the darkness that you experience will be as the fertilizer, the nutrients that grow you into this magnificent tree that will bear good fruit for the world. So sometimes all we can do is just wait. Allow ourselves to go through this metamorphosis, this transformation. To not resist so much, to allow the change to happen. To let go of the parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. And to rise into higher states of being through healing ourselves. And this is done through love and forgiveness. We have to forgive ourselves for what we have done. And we have to let go of the hate in our heart for others. And the more love we can cultivate within ourselves, and the more we can love others and love life, the quicker we will rise above these lower states of being. Because this is a game of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so if you are in a low frequency of vibration, then what is required is higher frequency emotions to help you rise your state upward. And so what are the highest states of being? It's love, it's gratitude, it's forgiveness, compassion, authenticity. God is of the highest frequency of vibration. And so if we can focus our attention on God, on what is eternal, then we can rise up more quickly. And at the very least, we can understand that we live in an eternal present moment. So the more attention, the more energy we can give to being present, the more we will become free from suffering, free from the mind, free from separation from God. Practice deep breathing, because the more we can circulate the life energy within us, the higher states of vibration we will find ourselves in. Because where life is, death is not. And so too, where life is not, death is. And that's why we experience hell. That's why we experience suffering. It's because something within us, whether it's trauma, whether it's conditioning, something is not allowing the life energy to flow freely within our bodies. And the mind is usually what cuts off that circulation. That's why we have to move our bodies and exercise, to breathe deeply. If you are in a deep rut, a deep depression, you have to start building momentum. That might mean just walking outside for 10 minutes a day. If you can barely get out of bed in the morning, you have to start small. Do one thing at a time. And slowly you will build momentum. And you will become free from this black hole. But so long as you don't do anything about it, if you lose hope, if you give up, well then, who's going to help you? Because in truth, nobody's coming to save us. Everybody's dealing with their own mess that they have to clean up. Most people don't have the luxury of carrying other people's burdens. Even if they are kind-hearted and try and help you, try and lift you up, they often will be unable to sustain that behavior for very long. So you have to be responsible for yourself. And it's very simple, but it can take time. And of course, it's going to take time to heal. But you will experience milestones along the way that kind of give you a breath of fresh air, that motivate you to keep going. So just don't stop. It's like a rocket ship trying to leave Earth's gravity. All of the energy is used just getting to the outer atmosphere. But once you're outside, you're free. So it will get easier and easier because you will get stronger and stronger. And it's just one step at a time, one moment at a time. Remember, if you can keep your focus on the present, close your eyes, find the presence that is here with you now. Sometimes you won't be able to see it that clearly. It's best seen in the morning times, right after we wake up, before our mind turns on. There's often a deep sense of presence with us. Find that sensation and hold on to it. The more you focus on it, the more your life will begin to harmonize itself. It will take you to higher states of being. I know that no matter how far gone you think you might be, that you can and will make it, because I have done the same. So just keep going. Don't lose hope. One moment at a time. Move your body. Breathe. Find help. Find love and find forgiveness in your heart. And there is nothing that you will not be able to overcome.